We think Koki is the 10th Shiba Inu that we've had. They've been wonderful dogs, wonderful companions. They're so unique and their personalities are so strong. When they're young, they're a real challenge, which is kind of fun. As they mature, they get kind of like this gal here, they get kind of relaxed. But when they're young, they're a handful, and you can't let them outside without a harness and a leash or they're gone. Well, I remember that we were referred to a good breeder, and we went out to get one puppy, and we were loving on that puppy a little bit and deciding that we'd take her home, and the dog person brought out the sister. And one of us was holding Koki and one of them was holding her sister, and we had to get both of them. And that didn't work out very well because of the fact that they had their own little ohana, and they weren't about to join our ohana. And ended up we couldn't even housebreak them. But the leader of the pack was the smaller of the two, not Koki. And we rehomed her, and then Koki settled right down and decided to join our pack, our ohana. And she's been a sweet dog ever since. Well, she was still a Shiba, and so if she got out the door without a leash and a harness, she was gone. And bolting is a trait of these Shibas to the point that Shiba rescue people insist that you have to leash them to take them outside, and you have to put them in a harness. That was an issue with virtually every Shiba we ever had. Was when they were young, we could not take them outside. Now, as they got older, if they were Koki's age, then they would change. Koki was the one that we lost for 6 weeks, was it, on the island?
Yeah.
We were having a party, and Koki went up to the front door, and one of our friends thought, oh, she wanted to go outside. So we opened the door, and she was gone. And this was a wooded island with only one causeway on and off. And she never got off the island. The island was only 2 miles long, and it was heavily wooded. And everybody in the island was looking for her, and they'd see her, and she'd be coming out of the woods into a pasture, and we'd go to where she was and try to entice her to come with us, and she'd walk away and run away if we got very close. And she was 6 weeks gone, and there were storms, and we cried at night because Koki was out in there by herself, and there were coyotes and so on. But we put a reward out for her and published that around the island. Anybody who could capture Koki and bring her back would get $500. And there was quite a fair amount of construction on the island, and the contractors were really mad at us because all their guys were out looking for Koki instead of doing their work. Well, the way she was caught was good friends of ours had seen her walking along the lake. So they started following her. And of course, she wouldn't stop and let them capture her, but she made the mistake of turning and walking out on a dock. And they followed her out, and she got to the end of the dock. She turned around and looked at these folks and just sat down and said, okay, I'm busted. And they brought her home. And then the second time, we were going by motorhome up to a weekend harvest party that friends of ours who had a cornfield in Michigan. They'd bring in all their friends, and we'd spend 2 or 3 days picking the corn and shucking the corn and cooking the corn. Well, along the way, we stopped in South Bend, Indiana, and we parked the motorhome in a shopping mall, which we were prone to do. And Alice got up, I think, one morning, or was it in the evening, to take her out. But she made the mistake of opening the door behind her before she latched onto Koki. And Koki was out the door. And we couldn't find her. And we had to be at these people's event within a day or so. And we were in South Bend, and we had no idea it was dark, so we had no idea which way she'd even run. So that ended up being quite a story because we had to end up leaving her. And we didn't hear. We turned the Shiba rescue people, we had alerted. 4 months later, we got a call, and they had found Koki in 3 or 4 days. But they are so strict about, you got to have the dog on a leash anytime you go outside. They wouldn't give her back. And as a matter of fact, what I had to do was I looked up the information on the website, and we found out that they had an attorney or a lawyer of counsel to the Shiba rescue people in Illinois, I think it was. And so I had a guy an attorney in Chicago who'd done a little work for me at one time, and I called him and I said, "Do you want to practice a little dog law? I got to get the Shiba people to give us back this dog." And we're on their blacklist because we let her escape. And we negotiated the return of the dog. We had to sign a contract that if the dog ever got away again, that we gave up ownership. And then I said, "Well, I'll come up and pick her up this next weekend." And they said, "No, both of you have to come up and get her." Well, they had the dog, possession is 9 points to the law. And so I tried to travel up there and picked up Koki and brought her home. We came over here for our 50th wedding anniversary in August of 2022, and we decided we wanted to move here. And part of that plan, we were going to spend the winters in Palm Springs, where we had a lot of friends and had done a lot of business through the years. And we were spending the winters there and the summers here. Well, Koki's too large to carry in the cabin with you, so it would have meant crating her and taking her back and forth twice a year, and we didn't want to put a dog through that. And also then the red tape you go through every time you have to bring a dog back into Hawaii. So we decided we had to rehome Koki, and we found what we thought was a pretty good home for her. And then a few months later, unbeknownst to us, because Koki had started to run away from them, and they didn't have a fenced yard, and it became too much of a burden. So they rehomed her to a friend of theirs, and that's the last we knew until we got the call from Houston 3 years later that she'd been astray. She was found as a stray on the street. So we called the people back in Joplin and said, "What happened here?" And the guy said, "Well, I never wanted to tell you, but we made this trip to Houston, and Koki got out, and we couldn't find her." So we got the call from Houston because of her microchip. Microchip had never been re-registered. She didn't have a collar and a tag on it, so it hadn't been for the microchip. We'd have never, ever found her or known what happened. Yeah, we just almost instantly, realizing that she could come here because we were spending the year around here. There was no decision at all. But the logistics of it turned out to be a little bit complicated, but we were committed. And once you're committed, you just, you do what it takes.
Couldn't wait for the day to come. I mean, it was just, once we made the decision, she couldn't come quick enough.
Because of the Hawaiian regulations, you have to have current vaccinations. We had no records of her vaccinations for like 3 years. And those vaccinations have to be done a month apart. And then there's another month wait for the testing to come back to show that the vaccinations were effective. Well, then we knew we would be into July, and we were gonna fly her back here, crated. But we did the research, and you can't fly a dog out of an airport in a crate when it's more than 85 degrees out. And we were getting into June and July in Houston, so we had to solve that problem. My daughter had good friends in Joplin, a guy that said, "Hey, I'd love to go down and take her to the airport in Los Angeles where there was a direct flight into Honolulu." So we flew Taylor to Houston, and he picked her up. She'd been fostered by a really nice lady who had the one that found her on the street and did not want to take her back into a pet shelter, afraid that it wouldn't be good for the dog. So when I got a hold of her and I said, we found out the dog you picked up was our dog, and we'd love to have her back. And she said, "Well, I'll foster the dog then until you can come get her." And she said, "I've got 2 dogs on myself and 2 preschool kids." And said, "I can't take her, but I'd love to foster her." She took Koki to the vet and got the vaccinations up to date and took care of her, and the kids played with her, and he played with the other dogs. She was having a good old time. And then once she was cleared on the health issues of vaccinations, then our friend flew down to Houston. We rented a car for him, and he drove Koki from Houston to Los Angeles, and they had quite a nice little road trip out of that. We got pictures of Koki sitting out in front of the Alamo, and the caption was, "Koki remembers the Alamo." And we got pictures of her at Joshua National Park in California, and we got pictures of her in Palm Springs, standing in front of the iconic 12-foot high Marilyn Monroe statue. Yeah, so she enjoyed her little trip. He bonded with her on the trip from Houston to Los Angeles, and I think, he was kind of sad when he had to put her on the plane and send her here. Koki was delivered to LAX day before yesterday. We had booked her on a Pacific Air Cargo 747 cargo plane that makes it a trip to Honolulu every night, leaving LAX at 2:45 and getting in here at local time, maybe 3:30 or 4. And we booked her on that flight, and she flew over, and about 2.5 hours ago, we saw her for the first time in 3 years. Motored out there this morning, and it took about 30 minutes to get through everything to get her released to us. And
I brought her out in the crate, and there she was, and just, it was amazing.
She was immediately friendly. We want to think that she recognized us and knew that she was home, but I've come to also realize that she's a pretty friendly dog, and that fact that she was not agitated, shall we say. She was peaceful. She's a friendly dog with lots of personality, and when she got in the back seat, Alice was able to cuddle with her a little bit, but then she lied down and she'd take a nap. Mm-hmm. Yeah, she took a nap on the way in from the airport, so you could tell she was relaxed. Koki was our dog and our surrogate child and so on for the 2 years we had her. It's just kind of like we've taken right back to where we left off. On the mainland, we had a pretty good-sized fenced kennel and with a dog door. So our dogs, including Koki, could go outside, run around the kennel for as long as they wanted. They can come back in. But here, it's a little different. On the 28th floor of a high-rise building, there's a small dog run here in the building, but we've got plenty of places outside and within a block or two dog parks. So we expect to be doing that, and we might be able to train her on the lanai with the doggy pads. I don't know, but yeah, it'll be a little more challenging without the kennel with the dog door, but
Good for us and good for her to go walking.
yeah. Well, what has happened here really shows how the microchip can come into play. When she was found without a collar and without a dog tag, there'd have been no way that we'd ever known that Koki had resurfaced. But the microchip, through those 2 or 3 ownership changes, had never been re-registered, which was kind of interesting. So when she was found, they ran the microchip, called us. We've always microchipped the dogs, but we never realized, how critical that could be. And one of the things that, of course, the Humane Society does on behalf of the animals is they microchip all the dogs that they rescue, which is a really great thing. Interesting enough, when we got here and we didn't have a dog, we did meet Ginny too, who became a real good friend of ours. And she's a big advocate of the Humane Society, tirelessly works for them and supports them and so on. And Ginny's quite the salesperson, and before we knew it, we were involved in being patrons of the Humane Society, and it's been very worthwhile. And it wasn't because at that point in time we were dog owners, but they do such wonderful work, and our island needs, has a tremendous stray animal problem. And boy, they have to really work at getting the dogs rehomed, but they do a magnificent job. One of the key things that the Humane Society is doing is get all these animals microchipped. So if they get lost again, they can be brought home. We would encourage everybody to consider donating to help the animal population on the island. It's part of our community, Ohana, is our animals. And Humane Society is a really good website, and they also sponsor events during the year. And I would encourage everybody to take a look at it and consider doing what you can, either volunteering or donating or both.
And get your dog chipped.
Yes, get your dog chipped.